Okay. So you guys can see my screen now? I think you do. Okay. All right. Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita basically means God song, literally. Bhagavad stands for God and Gita stands for song. Now, God has nothing to do with the Hindu God or anything like that. God is just something you think is helping through things that we cannot explain with whatever knowledge we have today, give it science or whatever. And I especially want to frame this in the context of today's world that we live in. And, it is always good to look at Gita for a given context. People have translated Gita at different points of time through ages, going back thousands of years, right? So there was a translation by Adi Shankaracharya, who did it more in the context of Vedanta, almost kind of in response to what was going on with Buddhism. There have been other so many translations after that. But coming back to the biggest period when there were like a flood of translations was during the occupation of India by Britishers, right? So that at that time, there was a massive amount of, again, like a revival of Gita, if you will. And to my knowledge, so far, that period's discussion of Gita is still somewhat relevant to us because that happened in 1950. And I'm basing it off of that, and we will talk about that. But I want to start, so we will look at this from metaverse point of view. What I mean by that is today's string of new kinds of stimulations that are being presented in front of us, be it with TV, YouTube, Netflix, and augmented reality, virtual reality, all of that. So it's like it keeps on pulling us out from farther away from us, right? So I want to start first of all with Henry David Thoreau in Walden, and this is really a great introduction of what Bhagavad Gita does when somebody gets into it, right? In the morning, I bathe my intellect in the stupendous and cosmogonal philosophy of the Bhagavad Gita, since whose composition years of the gods have elapsed, right? It has been forever since it was written, and in comparison with which our modern world and its literature seem puny and trivial. So whatever your greatest philosophical book that you might have, the conciseness of Bhagavad Gita cannot be matched, is what his observation is, and which I tend to agree. Not because I'm a Hindu, I'm not a Hindu, even though I was born Hindu. And I doubt if that philosophy is not to be referred to a previous state of existence. So remote is its sublimity from our conceptions, right? We sometimes feel like, oh, so much time has passed, and that might just be out of context and all of that stuff, right? So the second paragraph kind of like hits home. I lay down the book and go to my well for water, and lo, there I meet the servant of the Brahmin, priest of Brahma, the creator, and Vishnu and Indra. These are the other gods. Vishnu is kind of the sustainer. And also Krishna, whom we are going to talk about, is the incarnation of Vishnu. These guys who still sits in his temple, the Brahmin sits in his temple on the Ganges, reading the Vedas, or dwells at the root of a tree with his crust and water jug. I meet his servant come to draw water for his master, right? And our buckets, as it were, grate together in the same well, right? So he thinks that the well, the notion of pulling water out of it, is somehow connecting him to that same Brahmin or the servant of that Brahmin, right? The pure Walden water is mingled with the sacred water of the Ganges. So the water is water everywhere. You can consider that as Ganges water. And so there is this continuity that he's trying to point to. And I tend to agree with that. So we will be following certain masters. I have listened to lectures from Swami Sarvapriyananda and Acharya Rajneesh, right? So there is quite a different way. Every person has their own take of Gita. Swami Sarvapriyananda comes from more of his monk background. He has been a monk for a while. Acharya Rajneesh, he's a little more contemporary, I would say, and he tries to bring multitude of philosophical, diverse views together, in my opinion. But from book's point of view, what we will be referring to, we will be focusing on this particular edict here, right, which is emphasis on action without renouncing this world, right? We don't have to be the monks, or we don't have to adopt any religion, no rituals, none of that sort. So one of the book that I am going to refer to is by Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was born 1869 to 1948, right? So he is Indian by birth, but English by education, right? So he became a lawyer in England, but he eventually became the father of India because he struggled for India's independence. And his mission was nonviolent resistance, right? So that is the key thing. And the task that he was upon was building a new nation. And he always used Gita for his guidance, right? Which to me is quite ironic in the sense that Gita is set up in the context of this humongous war, and it is on the battlefield. And here is this person who is getting his philosophy of nonviolence from Gita, right? His mantra was selfless human action. And remember, he's trying to build a very secular, poverty-ridden nation, right? He's trying to build that nation out of the whole, princely states or whatever scattered sort of India that there was before Britishers attacked India. And then, they were there for whatever number of hundreds of years, right? Or at least 200 years. So the doctrine of detachment or selflessness or work in the spirit of sacrifice is as old as creation, right? So his whole drive is how he can get people to think about each other, help each other, because ultimately the nation has to be built with unity of thoughts. And there was Muslims and Hindus and just all kinds of multitude of different religions that were trying to help build this nation, right? So that was his drive at that time. And this was again very as early as in 1947, right? That's when we got our independence. So that's his drive. And I think the book that has been written, he wrote that in Gujarati, which is in one of the languages in India, but that got translated into English. And not that Mahatma Gandhi's English was not good, but whatever he captured in Gujarati was translated by Mohan Desai. And that translation, the initial chapters of that particular book are very, very interesting because they kind of cover the introductory material that Madeline was pointing to, Eknath Vishwaran. Of course, yeah, you can refer to that, but I'm going to refer heavily to Mahatma Gandhi's book. And the initial few chapters that he has is a very quick read and very easy to understand. Actually very good English as well. It's a very interesting read, I thought. And it gives the background, be it, historical context and all kinds of stuff, right? The other person that I want to introduce, remember throughout these series of sessions that we have done last year, we have introduced a bunch of different people. One of them we introduced last time when we talked about freedom of will was Ramakrishna Paramhansa, right? This time, I'm going to introduce another person by the name Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo Ghosh is a very interesting person. He is quite a saintly character, very erudite, very scholarly. He was again contemporary to Gandhi, about the same period, 1870 to 1950, Indian by birth, English by education, right? So his father basically believed that had his kids, they were like 3 or 4 brothers or something, had their kids and their family grew up in India, they're not going to understand the world. And he basically moved to Great Britain and England, and then he brought up his family there, and he isolated his whole family from any kind of Hindu culture. But that whole isolation kind of made Aurobindo come closer, if not farther, to the Indian culture. So he, after he did his education, he passed with stellar grades and stuff with this very complicated exam. I think it was called as ICS back in the days. That was one of the exams that you took in England to then come and find some political or government role in Indian British government back then, right? So his father was very key on that. And he was one of the people who kind of passed that. But then he comes to India, and then he kind of takes over the whole freedom revolution, right? He kind of gives up what his father wants to do. So it's kind of like a mini Buddha story, if you will. Buddha was kind of his father put him in a conclave and preventing him to see any kind of suffering. But here he comes out and says, life is suffering, and he's trying to solve the suffering problem, right? And this person, Aurobindo Ghosh, a little bit same thing. He's kind of isolated from Hindu philosophy. He studies all kinds of other, Christian philosophy and everything. But then he comes back to Indian philosophy. He was also a freedom fighter. He was put in jail, but he has a slightly different take on Gita compared to Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was completely non-violence. Basically, that was his thing. Aurobindo Ghosh basically said that, yes, it is about non-violence, but there are times when you will have to take up arms if the other party is not willing to whatever, right? Cooperate, right? So there was a little bit of a tussle there. So he was put in jail, and after that, he basically sort of almost kind of gave up. During the jail, he kind of came across, or he was reading about Gita, and he wrote the translation for Gita, and he sort of took himself away from public life. His philosophy, his mission was this thing he called as integral yoga. And he said that, unless and until we find a way for everybody to find their inner divine, this whole notion of we are building a nation and we are building a society and all of that stuff is sort of meaningless. So he had way higher goals than what Gandhi was trying to achieve. And he thought that spiritual life should be and must be the foundation. Now, spiritual has nothing to do with divinity or God or anything like that. It is the spirit within us, right? The best of us. And that needs to be the foundation to guide politics, economics, educational policies, whatever, right? And he was really trying to bring India at a world forum, almost like at a world stage, right? Not as a nation that just got freed from Britain, right? So he wanted more than that, right? He was thinking more in terms of decolonized world state. He was very much against materialistic liberalism, bourgeoisie, and also just the socialism, communism, whatever they have, they both, in his opinion, have sort of failed with the cause of like building a more a holistic human being is what he thought, the integral human being, and which is what we see today, right? I mean, we are destroying the planet. We are causing all kinds of havoc everywhere. And consumerism has taken over, materialism has taken over. So a lot of his philosophies and things that you might read that is outside of Gita is quite very relevant to what we are today, right? The other last point that I want to bring up is that he very much was one of the followers of Henry Bergson. Henry or Henri Bergson, I guess the French pronunciation. He was one of those people who kind of challenged Darwin's principles of evolution, right? So he basically said that there is more to just a physical evolution where, monkey, ape, and human being type of a transition. And he really stressed on the life force or elan vital. So In that concept is sort of like Aurobindo kind of gravitates towards that, and he builds a vast philosophy around it, right? And his goal for Gita was selfless divine action, or he wanted to build a superhuman. In his thought process, he thinks that evolution has done its thing, human evolution has come to a point where physically we have changed. But now he thinks that the evolution beyond from here is going to be mental evolution, right? So his take on Gita, and this is from his book, is we do not belong to the past dawns, but to the noons of the future. So he is wanting to take the knowledge of Gita, but apply it for current and future problems, right? Not just dwell on some philosophies from the past. A mass of new material is flowing into us. We have not only to assimilate the influences of the great theistic religions of India, right? So there is a lot of things going on at that point from Hinduism point of view, and recovered sense of the meaning of Buddhism, right? So Buddhism took us away from worldly things, the problems, and everybody wanted to become a monk effectively. But to take full account of the potent, though limited revelations of modern knowledge and seeking. So he also said that you want to put 1 foot into the past and look at this philosophy, but you also want to pay respect to the science and knowledge and everything, right? So we want to build a human who can sort of assimilate all of this stuff. And beyond that, the remote and dateless past, which seem to be dead in returning upon us with an effulgence of many luminous secrets long lost to the consciousness of mankind, but now breaking out again from behind the veil, right? I mean, that to me, it kind of seems relevant even today, right? With all the new technologies that we are looking at, and the conflicts that we have with religion and all of that stuff, right? So I feel like Ghosh has not been given his due. So it would be good to at least, bring up his name, and I'll be using his book. Some of his writings seem very, very deep, like, they're very hard to understand, some of the English constructs. Mahatma Gandhi's is a little more easier to understand. So I'm going to go switch back and forth between those two. So we are definitely not interested in any historical, archaeological details, none of that, right? Linguistic, poetic, metaphorical, and all of that stuff. I'm not too keen on that, because we will not be reading the direct Sanskrit version. We'll be reading the English translation. We don't care about Krishna's existence, if he was there or not there. That's not the point of this. Or the authorship, right? There is quite a bit of discussion of that in Gandhi's book, if you want to go and read that. Our interest is going to be philosophical interest, and the context is going to be today's technologies and how it is affecting us, and basically bringing all the conversations back to who am I, right? Everything in world pulls us to seek outside, as I said. Yeah, here in this particular series of discussions, we will flow inside to see outside, right? So there is a way to come back to your inner self and then experience the world. That is how Gita should be interpreted. Nature, as we see through our thoughts, intellect. So nature is a very interesting word, right? In English, it's it kind of depicts our inner nature and also the physical nature out there, the world, right? So and the equivalent word for this, which we will be covering, which is called as prakriti, in Hindu word, and that is still sort of used in the same context, but there is a larger philosophical context as well. And so we are looking at the world through the lenses of our thoughts, our intellect, senses, all the stimuli that is coming to us, and, it could be the past conditionings, movies that we watch or binge watch or whatnot, right? I mean, that is what is building this world and how we view the world. So that is the perception, right? That builds our world. Consciousness or self that we have been stressing during the last series of things that we discussed around Vedanta, as in what makes us see the nature, right? So whatever we are experiencing, these thoughts and objects and all of that, There is that Elan Vital that Henri Bergson talked about, right? So that is something, there's a life force that is absolutely necessary. So that is the foundational, canvas, if you will, where all of this nature is printed on. This is by far like the real summary of the Gita that we will try to drive and look for the answers around this, is when inner nature is purified, the outer nature becomes bliss, and the notion of sin is not sin anymore. And even in violence, right? So whatever action you, as worst as violence, cannot be sin if you have the right attitude towards it. The doctrine of detachment or selflessness, or work in the spirit of sacrifice, and we will cover more of that. Practice to perfection by the seers, right? So this is all the people that have gone through this exercise. And this is heavily argued out in Gita as in no other scriptures, right? And this last 3 bullets come from Gandhi's book. So there are 2 ways of looking at this, right? So there is the left side is almost kind of like a blind faith type of a approach that a lot of people have. And I would argue that some Hindus, who are very religious, my mom was extremely religious. So I always found this a little bit puzzling, is that she would want to say, like, this is how it is, and it is how it is, right? So there's don't ask any questions. So here we are looking at these masters' knowledge on this God song, the Gita book. And then, one approach is you can take that and keep it on the shelf and pray to it and, let it collect dust, which is, and they say, that Gita is amazing. Or instead, take the book, decode it for yourself, make it your knowledge, not so much master's knowledge, but just your own knowledge. And it is okay to start with utter disbelief rather than this kind of a blind belief, right? It is, in fact, actually better to start clean slate without any conditioning about what it is and what an amazing book it might be, or it might be some caste system or whatnot, right? And there could be positive, negative biases. Religious rituals are a poor substitution for understanding of what the religion texts or spirituality that it is trying to drive at, be it Bible, be it Gita, whatever, Quran. There are rituals, but the idea of rituals is for you to kind of realize that, but no religion ever drives towards that. And that's one of the things that Krishna will talk about in Gita. The substratum of everything is of mental character. This comes from, I think this guy is a mathematician, Eddington. So it's how our mind wants to see the world, right? That's the really, our mind is really happens to be the most important piece of the puzzle. And we will look at that more in detail. Also, there is intention and then there is action. So there is something that we tend to do out in the world, but what Gita is going to drive us to look at is not just the sensory, verbal, or be it eating or touching or whatnot, right? There is something that we tend to do automatically, but then we also want to look at the inner way of what drives that action, or what makes us not want to do something, right? So the intention is way more important than action. So we'll look at that. So this is the breakdown of some sections that I'm again sort of following what Gandhi has. And I think it's a good breakup or good kind of like sessions that we can probably target. So I'm going to use that as a guide. We will be looking at the first one today, which I call it as instant yoga, in the sense that chapter 1 and chapter 2, what they do is they sort of take all of the teaching of 18 chapters and just put it right there for you immediately. But it is so dense that you cannot understand, and neither our hero of the book, Arjuna, understands that, right? So, and then there is all these questions that come about, and there is more Gita that follows after that. So chapter 1 starts with yoga of the dejection of Arjuna, right? Arjuna is gone into depression. Dejection is actually, we think that as a negative, has a negative connotation, but the darkness is actually where you can actually appreciate the light. So dejection is the crucial first step. You cannot be in the middle level. When you come, life is going to bring you at some interesting dilemmas and conflicts. And that is the time when your education, your philosophies, your whatever you have read, they are going to come to your, if they don't, then you might as well be illiterate. So it is good to use these practices in the times of darkness, right? So dejection in extreme with the right guide, right? Now, we're not going to be as lucky as Arjuna to have Krishna around us, but the fact that we are here looking at it, reading it, hopefully it might come to our rescue in the times of darkness. Now, of course, dejection can also lead to suicide, but that's not the goal. The idea is to see how it can enlighten us and enjoy this world while there are sufferings. So Arjun is an interesting name, the Sanskrit name. He's starting with utter disbelief, right? Now, he's sort of clean slate. He's pure of heart. He's not against this learning of new things. He really comes to Krishna and says, I need help. I don't understand. I think I'm doing a mistake by going and killing my brothers, right? Rishu also means straight, frank, and plain, right? So he has no malice whatsoever, and he's just really completely saddened by the fact that the whole war is like he's the hero of the war, and he's supposed to rescue the world from these bad people, right? And he doesn't think that that is right because these are his brothers and grandfather and whatnot, right? Teachers and everything. Now, yoga here, why do they call dejection as yoga? Because yoga has a certain understanding that we have, there's a positive connotation to it. But yoga also has multitude of meanings. One of the meanings here, I understand this to be, is a meeting or uniting. Here Arjuna meets with dejection, right? And that is the key to this whole philosophy to kind of spring out of it, right? So the first verse in Sri Aurobindo Ghosh's translation, the PDF, it starts with Dhritarashtra saying, on the field of Kurukshetra, the field of Dharma, gathered together, eager for battle, what did they, O Sanjaya, my people and the Pandavas, right? What did they do? And then Sanjaya goes into this whole narration. Now, let's understand some of this context here, right? The author is Vyasa, right? He has written this epic, which is quite huge. I think it's the largest epic, if you will. It's the Mahabharata, and it covers multiple generations. And the interesting part in this is Vyasa is also a progenitor, like he's one of the fathers of at a point in that story. And it's kind of interesting that he's taking his own family story and putting a whole narrative out there. And Gita is part of this narrative, a small section in it. One of the main characters, Dhritarashtra, who starts the Gita here, I might use DH as his short name at points. He is father of this villainous character, Duryodhana. He's his Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra himself is an elder son to another king, but he's also blind. So what happens is he is not given the kingdom at an earlier point in the story. And the story comes to a place where now the new heirs are supposed to be chosen. His brother, Dhritarashtra's brother, is Pandu, and he's the father of Arjuna, right? The hero of our story. He has been sent to exile because of some bad thing that he has done. And when that is done, right, Dhritarashtra becomes the king for a short while, but then he dies. Sorry, not Dhritarashtra, but Pandu dies, the father dies, right? And now these guys have grown up, the second family, this is family number one at the top, Dhritarashtra, and the family number two is Pandavas. Like the Dhritarashtra's family is called as Kauravas, and the second family is Pandavas, right? So Pandavas have grown under the aegis, if you will, of Dhritarashtra, right? And they are not really treated well. And they are always kept away from the kingdom. They are either one reason or the other. They are tortured by these Kauravas. These are 100 kids up here, and these are only 5 Pandavas. So there is a lot of atrocities that are done throughout the story. And at this point, we have come to a place where the Arjuna is basically now saying enough is enough. We have to go to war, and we have to basically get our kingdom back. Right, so that's the Kurukshetra is the place where the battle is going to happen. That is the region, and good and the bad are the Kauravas, good are the Pandavas. Now, this can be looked upon as our own internal struggle, daily dilemmas that we have, conflicts that we have, right? There is a notion of darkness, and then there is a notion of like, we know what is the right thing, yet we can't do what is right, given our greed or fear or anger or whatnot, right? So those are the darker elements. And the battlefield is literally our mind, body, and this world, right? That as we see out here. And we can take this whole conversation in the context of our own internal struggles. Now, who is Sanjaya? Because this character will come time and often as we read this. He happens to be the charioteer of Dhritarashtra, who is the blind king. Now, Sanjaya himself has been given a gift of seeing events at a distance. He sort of has the divine vision. And who gives him that is this person, Vyasa. Vyasa is like a yogi, and he has achieved some amazing superpowers, and he can give power to Sanjaya, saying, hey, you're going to have this television type of vision, if you will, and you can telecast all the details that is happening on the field to Dhritarashtra, and so that Dhritarashtra can see what is going on the field, right? So that's why he's asking Sanjaya up here, like, hey, what's going on in Kurukshetra? What in the field of Dharma. And I believe that this is an interesting narrative vehicle employed by the author to present the story, right? I mean, to present the philosophical context and philosophical narrative, where he's taking this blind king who is sitting with this person who has a divine vision, and he's narrating a story that is happening way out in the battlefield between these two characters, Krishna and Arjuna. So now there is so much metaphor here that, I'll let you explore that on your own. Dharma has quite an interesting set of meanings, right? So Dharma is, it can be righteousness, faith, duty, law, virtue, right, what is right, what is wrong, denomination, what is your role? Like, you could be a warrior, you could be a whatnot, right? Engineer and all that stuff. Sect, what do you belong to? And so there are certain dharmas that you follow. And what is your merit in the society? What is your attribute? What is your nature? What is your quality? So it is used in a very, like, if you talk about dharma to a Hindu, he immediately knows, hey, I'm following my dharma, right? He could be coming from a certain kind of a caste, and there's certain things, or it could be a ritual, a religious ritual that they have to do, and they also call that as dharma. And when it comes to conflicts, how do you deal with conflicts? They again go back to dharma, right? So there's all kinds of things. Now Dhritarashtra calls this as the field of dharma, except it is not, right? Because here there's a brutal war that is about to follow, and he still calls it as a field of dharma. He thinks that he's doing the right thing by going to war against Arjuna and Pandavas, so that his son can get the throne, right? And he thinks that's a war of virtue for him. So humans, as we know, even today, there are wars that are fought under the name of faith and right and all of that stuff, right? So that is somewhat similar to what is going on here, except this is not almost, it is a civil war. So now what happens is Arjuna, he basically comes to the war and it is about to begin, and he tells Krishna, oh man, could you take me into the middle of the war, the battlefield, and show me these people who I'm going to fight? Now, Krishna, what he does is he does a really interesting thing, and that's why he's the he is the god here, right? He's the best guide. He does not take Arjuna to face Duryodhana, for example, because he's a hated character. And it is easy to justify a war when you see somebody you hate. So what Krishna does is he takes Arjuna's chariot in the middle of the place, in the middle of the battlefield, right in front of his grandfather, whom he loves. And grandfather is really a good character, except he has chosen to fight the war from the bad side. And also his teacher, who he really loves, Drona. So Bhishma and Drona. Bhishma is the grandfather, Drona is the teacher. And there he is standing. And Arjuna looks at them and he goes, oh my God, I'm going to kill these guys. I love them. This is impossible. I cannot do this. And he totally there's a meltdown going on, right? And he then starts talking about battle is bad, right, Krishna? I mean, why are we fighting? We shouldn't be fighting. We should be striving for peace. And this is at the last moment. There has been peace conversations that have happened in the past, which have failed. And he knows that. But here he has completely lost his energy to kind of take the battle to its closure. And this is, I akin this to, it is very similar to many a times we as human beings face this kind of a situation, right? We make some mistake or we get angry, and then what follows after a couple hours or a day or whatever, we kind of feel regretful of what we did. We have a different state of mind compared to when we bursted out earlier. I am certainly guilty of that, right? And now we want to regret, or we want to apologize. But remember, all of this dejection that Arjuna is feeling, or the regret or apology that we tend to feel, it really is coming from, oh my God, how can I possibly do this? I'm such a good guy, right? It is about me. It is about saving my ego. So Arjuna's depression really is not coming from kindness for the other side. He's more worried about his own feelings, or his own feelings towards these loved ones that he has on the other side. So he's feeling nervous. He talks about omens. Remember, this war is happening centuries ago, where omens and all of that is quite prevalent. Religion is quite a common thing. Sin is considered, heaven is part of the whole equation, right? And he doesn't want to slay the family. He says, I don't need the kingdom. I don't need these pleasures. Even if I win, I don't need the victory. The best thing that we can do is just stop this war, Krishna. Like, why are we doing this? There's got to be sin in killing. There is. I know for sure, he says. This is the wisdom he has, right? And remember, there's one more context here, is in one of the peace talks, Dhritarashtra sends Sanjaya to Arjuna to kind of coach him, guide him. Hey, listen, Pandavas, you are good people. Why do you want to take this path of war? So what if you don't get the kingdom? What is so wrong in feeling satisfied with what you have? And so there's this whole narrative that he comes up with, Sanjaya, on the part of Dhritarashtra to save the kingdom. And that is still like there is the conditioned mindset that Arjuna has from that conversation. So he almost repeats that, right, to Krishna, saying, hey, look, he doesn't say I heard it, but Krishna knows that he's repeating what he heard just a few days ago. And he also says, as part of his wisdom, Arjuna's wisdom, based on conditioning, that this is going to be total destruction. Traditions will be messed up, lawlessness will be followed, women will be in trouble, the notion of sects, will be all confused, society will be destroyed, and we will go to hell. Not just we, but our ancestors who have already passed away, they might be thrown in hell. Our family will go in hell. Our generations to come will be going to hell, and I don't want to be responsible for that, right? So that is where Arjuna is. Then chapter 2 starts, right? So I'm initially going to cover the summary, and hopefully we can read through this stuff. I don't know if we can do that, but at least this can give you guys some context to maybe read it on your own. So Sankhya philosophy is the chapter 2 is like the knowledge yoga or Sankhya yoga, right? Sankhya in this context means knowledge. Back then, right now, here is a little bit of archaeological history, if you will. And I got this from Wikipedia, so none of this might be true. All of it might be true. It sort of makes sense to me. So there used to be a person by the name, a saintly person by the name Kapila Muni, right, who created the initial version of Sankhya philosophy. And he is very, again, a lot of his writings are very, very deep. And, there is a ton of research, as every other researcher in India has done. It's always about searching within, right? So the lab has been self. Self has always been the lab. And he comes up with evolutionary principles out of that. Like, how did this universe got formed, or how did human beings come about, right? So he is coming to this Darwinian sort of conclusion from a different point of starting point, right? From consciousness, or from ourself, from my awareness, if you will, right? So this philosophy was sort of very much prevalent back in the days. It was a bit scattered, and then comes some more time has passed, and during that time, the whole Mahabharata has happened. There has been characters through archaeological discoveries that they find some character who is very similar to Krishna. Back then, nobody knows for sure, but Krishna's Bhagavad Gita here takes all of this philosophy and presents it in a very concrete structural fashion, right? And that is why a lot of people really like this. You could read ton and ton of books from Hindu philosophy, and they might not give you that much what you can get from just these 700 verses that are here in this small book. So the Brahman is the primary source, or the consciousness, if you will, and cause of all that exists. Karma, the rebirth cycle, is supposed to govern all of our actions, right? Rebirth, to suffer through the fruits of deeds. Good deed, bad deed, you're going to come back. And this life that you're coming back is a life of suffering. And the idea is how to get out of it. You don't want this karma cycle. Now, one more thing to mention here is Bhagavad Gita happens to be one of the 3 foundational books for the Vedanta philosophy, which is quite popular these days, right? We have talked about this. So the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and Brahma Sutras, these are the 3 foundational books for Vedanta philosophy, which sort of matured during this time frame, which, as you can see, right, the time has progressed here. Now here, in this case, right, knowledge yoga, the meaning of yoga is slightly different here. The earlier meaning that we saw was unity. And remember that, right? As we go through this series of readings, you will see the term yoga, and it can either mean unity or it can mean the mindset, right? When the senses are stilled, when the mind is at rest, the intellect wavers not, then and only then, say the wise, reached the highest stage, right? So that is when that is the yoga, when you're at that highest stage. This steady control of the senses and the mind is defined as yoga, right? So this comes from Kathopanishad. I'm not going to go through these breakup of different elements that Kapila Muni came up with, but we will look at that at a little more higher level, right? So there is a metaphor that we can sort of remember here. There's the ocean and the foam bubble. So we are like that tiny bubble, or any object that you look in the world is sort of like that tiny bubble in the ocean, on the top of the ocean, right? And we are searching the canvas, or we are searching for the canvas, sorry, typo there, for the canvas on our own, right? So this is our self journey. So the bubble is trying to figure out like, hey, look, I'm not an isolated bubble. I'm part of the ocean. And that search, most of the Indian philosophies tend to advocate renunciation, right? So you want to renounce everything that tells you or brings you back to the world, right? And you want to sort of not let that drive your thinking process. And the other terminology is that, for people who are going on this path is also sannyasi or tyagi, where they have really sort of, even the mind and the object, the body for them is the object, and the consciousness is the subject, right? So when I say I, it is not this body, it is the consciousness. So now let's understand this, right? So everything is the substratum of everything is consciousness or Brahman, or the other terminology that we might see time to time in the book is Paramatma. So the highest Atma, if you will. So that is the floor of everything, right? Everything comes out of that. So what is evolution, or what is birth, right? So 5 physical elements and 18 subtle elements, right? Subtle elements are these out here. They come together and forms this soap bubble, if you will. So what is the content of the soap bubble? This lighter white thing is sort of similar. Purusha, Atma, Jiva. These are the names that you might see. They mean the same thing. This is my Elan Vital, or my life force, or my consciousness, or the ability that, just by having an eye does not make it possible for our body to see, or having the brain by itself does not make that happen, right? So there's something else that plays that important role that makes us the seer of the objects, right? So that is the subject. The consciousness is the subject, and everything else is the prakriti, or the maya, or the nature that we talked about, is the object, right? And the object can range from these 3-4 different things, right? Mind, I, or the ego, the subtle body, as they call it, right? Mind is where our name is. If you look at our names and stuff like that, right? This is how we identify things, and the location for that is in the mind. Ego, desires, our tendencies, etc. Anything that you cannot see in a physical space, that you can put that in one bucket, and they all tend to be objects for this one single subject, consciousness. And the body, our physical body, is also a subject, but here there is the name, and then there is a form, right? There's a shape to objects. Our body has a shape, and so that is that physical shape that you see that is outside. And senses like our eyes and hands and touch and eating, tongue, all of that. So that is all part of the body. And then there is suddenly, because we have this limited space that we have identified with, now there is all the others out there, right? The world is out there. In fact, this is the same place where deities are born, right? So when we pray to a god and all of that, that is our imagination. So we have objectified it. And it is now, as per this philosophy, that is also part of the Prakriti. And all of this comes and goes, right? So there is a notion of evolution and dissolution. Now, what causes this, right? So if you look at the article from Gandhi's book, there is some turbulation that happens. I don't know how it happens, neither does the book talk about it. But that turbulation is there is a sort of a balance between these 3 types of energies in consciousness. Tamas, which is inertia or no action, right? Or, you can look at it as laziness, I guess. The other is rajas, which is action, right? So I want to do something, that feeling, that notion of you want to do something. Most animals have that, I have it, you have it, everybody has it. And then there's the sattva. And sattva is, again, like a virtuous action, if you will, right? So these three gunas in a different combination sort of gives rise to these different objects that you see in the world. Different human beings, different objects, they have all kinds of variations of these three different gunas, right? So we will be using this terminology, Purusha, Prakriti, and these gunas at different points because Krishna uses them, right? And then, once we are born, we die. And that death basically is our five elements returning back to their physical thing. All the atoms go back to wherever they belong, earth to earth, fire to fire, all of that stuff, right? But then there is these 18 elements, the subtle elements, they go find a new body, right? Why do they find a new body? Because when you were born and you lived a life, you did certain things, and you did some good things, bad things, karma. And you had some desires, you had some egos, and these tendencies and everything, right? They kind of build a certain set of subtle body, if you will, right? That lives on, and it grabs on to the next womb that is available, and next body, it could be anything. And depending on the quality of your karmas, you get that kind of next life. And that is the birth death cycle that they're talking about. Ultimately, we want to get to this state where I am not the doer, right? One of the problems that Arjuna has is, look, I might be killing this grandpa or my teacher who I love, and I'm causing so much sin. There is this doership that we want to abdicate. And how Krishna is going to give us some guidance on that, right? Even though that does not mean no actions, right? So that is not the goal. That is, in fact, the bad state. That is the worst possible state, no action. You want to do action without any kind of doership. And you want to go, basically, we today kind of relate only with this mind-body complex, right? World, everything feels real. We are in this Prakriti space, but we really want to associate ourselves with the Purusha. And that is the teaching, basically, that Krishna offers. And it's sort of like, I call it as attitude adjustment, as against looking at the world as a problem maker, and then you're reacting to it. How can you look at it from the point of view of Purusha, right? So it's just a change of perspective. And when I look at second chapter, when I break down these verses like this, there is literally like a breakdown of like a problem statement, solution statement, and what we can do, right? He covers all of this. Krishna covers that very nicely in the second chapter, but it is so dense that, we need 18 other chapters, right? His real, very basic teaching is know thyself, right? Let everything come from that consciousness space. Arjuna knew the right way to think and say, and a lot of it came from conditioning, like I said, right? So he had somebody else feed those ideas, and then he thought that that is the wisdom. And, if you look at it, it's not just Arjuna's problem, right? It is our problem too. When we come to a point, some of us who are so-called good people, we might take a position that might look ethically right, but that might not be good from society's point of view, right? So we can justify that to ourselves, saying, hey, look, I was a good guy. I am not going to help out. I'm not going to do anything there, right? So that is, we still struggle with that today. Our griefs and sorrows come from, according to Krishna, from this body-mind attachment. These other beings, right? We think of everything else as separate from us, right? And also, our sufferings can come from natural causes, right? So things that are happening around us. So why do we want to enlighten? This is not some really a foreign concept. Somehow we have kept this idea on a pedestal. And we think, oh yeah, those are not nice, highfalutin ideas, kumbaya, yeah, it's not meant for me. Thank you, I love it, I'll read about it, bye-bye, I'm going to go back to Netflix. So that is typically 99% of us tend to fall in that trap, right? But really it is very practical. That's what Krishna is trying to suggest here. And why do we want this is because of these griefs and sorrows, coming from body, mind, or other people, and the natural causes, which is out of our control, right? So we want a way to look at it, as a permanent cure for all of this, right? And for that, we have to go on a spiritual quest. It just feels like a very big terminology, but it is not. It is just a different change of attitude. And we want to free ourselves from this transient state of this body or this life that we think is the only thing that is available, right? And if you notice, right, whatever Arjuna is going through is our problem too, right? Our conscience tends to be very selective when it comes to my family, my friend, my loved one, or my party, or my nation, right? I'm going to be biased towards that. As much as you say, no, I'm not a biased person, our ideas, if you really think deeply and step away from the problem, you will notice that, you will have that preconceived bias, right? The sense of reality has been quickened in him and prevents him from asking. This is Arjuna, right? These two paragraphs come from Arvind Ghosh's, no, actually, this is also from Gandhi. If the self is imperishable, if the self does not kill, does not act in the consciousness, one of the things that Krishna says is, who is doing the killing and acting? Who is getting upset? It is the Prakriti, right? And he's the one, our body, our mind, the thing that we have associated with, that is the one that is worried about this whole battle being bad and sin and all of that, right? But this consciousness really does not, you cannot kill consciousness. It is there, and it is just always going to go back to wherever Brahman was, and it was given to you for a short while, or you emerged in that vast ocean as that bubble, right? The self does not kill, does not act. Arjuna could ask, why should I then engage in this violent undertaking at all? And but we know the reality, as we have discussed here, right? So the reality is that Arjuna has fought many wars in the past, and he has never come to this ethical dilemma. He has killed a lot of people, but in this war, he is about to kill his loved ones, and that is the primary thing that he doesn't quite understand, and he's still feeling that pang, if you will, of hurting his loved ones. So when we come to this kind of dilemma, should we suppress our better selves? So Arjuna could have almost asked this question, right? Dost thou indeed want me to fight as I did of old, prompted by thought of pride and glory and heroism, and to suppress the promptings of a better and a finer self, right? But he doesn't give, Krishna doesn't give him a chance to even talk about that, right? So he just hits a higher note, reminds him of equanimity, like, don't think about wins and losses. Don't think about all those things, right? Come from a different perspective, come from better self. Arjuna's lament is primarily due to his attachment to the body. He says, like, how can I kill my grandpa, my teacher? It is again a bodily attachment, right? So these relationships are because he was Arjuna and they are Bhishma and all of that. So the feelings of kinship that springs from it, and we all suffer from that. We love our kids way more than our neighbor's kid, that's one of the problems, right? Now, Arjuna's approach tends to be our typical approach when it comes to conflicts. Arjuna is in the battle for rightful reasons. Yes, whatever he's doing against Duryodhana, there's a valid reason for him to fight and save the community from this atrocity, right? And he's driven, though, from worldly sense, passion, desire, revenge, right? So when you come to a situation and you suddenly feel this conflict of, am I doing this right or wrong? The reason why that happens to us, this right or wrong type of a dilemma, is because at the root of it is this notion of trying to help somebody because I want to be good, right? It is either coming from that, or look, everybody knows that other guy is bad, and so I need to hit him, right? So it is a bit more revengeful approach. Or it is coming from our senses or passion. So it is a very superficial root cause that brings us to a conflict, and that conflict situation really then becomes a dilemma, because the drivers are these desires and passion and all of that stuff, right? Even though your reason is rightful. So that is where, if you have purified your approach, you purified your action, they call it pure action, right? We are going to get to that. Then you are not going to feel that pang. You're not going to feel that dilemma. So Arjuna realizes at the 11th hour, his petty selfishness, right? Even though he forgot about the rightful cause, but then he was feeling guilty that he's going to kill the other guys. But only Krishna could explain to him that, look, that is happening because you have a desire to win, or you hate Duryodhana, you hate these other people and all of that, right? So don't approach this war from there. Think about the whole community. If you drop your weapons, there are a lot more people that are going to get hurt. He suddenly is gripped with despondent, dejection, terrible shock. He's blindly repeating conditioned responses, which is what we do, right? We know what is good, what is the right thing to say, what is going to make us look good, what tweet is going to give us most likes, what kind of political affiliation, what kind of organic food I need to buy, and how I need to say it in front of my friends so that my friends like me more, right? Most of our stuff is very superficial, and that is happening more so today than at any times, or maybe it's the same. It definitely is not less. So Krishna's advice is do the duty without absolutely no bias of wanting to win or loss. So when one is focused on the act for right reasons, right? So you do something because you have come to a sort of a level that's, you feel that this is the right thing to do, right? That is your duty. And you happen to be the expert, right? So in this case, Arjuna was the best warrior. He was the best known bowman during that time. And, so he was the right guy and that defines your duty. One is then not gripped with guilt, and one is also not as troubled by win or loss. So let's say you do come like, I have done this right thing. I'm going to do this right thing. It is good for the society. Now you might lose. So even if you lose, there will be the glory that you did the right thing that you're going to get. So you will still go to heaven as per the Hindu mythology or Hindu whatever. You will get to heaven. Now, if you win, of course it is heaven, right? So both ways, it is the right approach. So your guiltless approach to an action, not looking at the action itself as good or bad. Now, how to find this duty, right? That's also sort of puzzling. Now, Krishna's approach to duty in the second chapter is knowing the self. Once you know the self, everything out there is known. So everything is emerging out of that consciousness. So if everything is emerging out of consciousness, these are all secondary items. The primary item is consciousness. I'm a conscious being. As long as I can look at the other person also as the conscious person, and I know what the right thing is, I am supposed to be doing, that is enough, right? So don't let the desires muddle you. Don't let fear muddle you, right? So there are some Sanskrit terms here that can help identify one's duty. Swarupa. Swarupa is that Purusha, or the consciousness that, the pure consciousness that we have, or the jiva that we have within us. And then we have our tendencies, our subtle body, right? The swabhava. And this is our nature. And, you can see this between siblings in a family. One person might be very godly or very different than the other person, who might be more artistic. The other person might be more science-oriented, math-oriented. Yeah, so there's all these things that we come, has nothing to do with the kind of parents that have given you the birth, right? So it comes from somewhere. And that is why Indians or Hindu philosophy really believes in this reincarnation, right? Or sort of like a revival of those tendencies through the subtle body that never dies. And Swadharma is basically those tendencies within you, right? You might be good at math. You might be good at science. You might be good at, fighting. You might be a great soldier. You might be a good leader. You might be a good hotelier, right? You could be running the hotel really well, right? You could have all these inner abilities that will help you, not just your family, but the whole society, right? That swabhava, the tendency or the inner nature that you're born with, should guide your profession, duty towards society, your ethics, your morality, your righteousness, really. So that is where the duty can spring upon you, and also the need from the society, right, at a given point in time. So Krishna's advice and observations is, do not ever neglect your swabhava. Now, you might have a tendency to, go write a poetry or something, right? Now, because of your parents or something, who might tell you, no, you got to be a doctor, right? The moment you do that, you're taking the son or the daughter away from what they're good at. And that is going to be a disaster, right? Even, in any worldly action, if you try to neglect your tendencies, you are going to have some trouble. Do your swadharma. Actions assigned, they could be assigned to you, or they could be undertaken. You could be called upon to do that action. They could be any of those things based, and most of the time, if you're lucky, right, they are based off of your swabhava. Focus on the inner peace, irrespective of dualities like win-loss. So whatever action you're taking, right, you want to ask yourself, when you do that action, are you feeling angry, or are you going to be elated if you win? Those are red signals. So that is when you got to stop. You don't have the right motive to do that action, even though that action might be great for everybody, right? So you just kind of refocus, like, hey, why am I doing this? I'm not doing this for winning, right? As the result is peril, even if you win, right? So even if you come at it with the notion that, hey, I'm going to win, rah, 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 and let's say you do win, you are going to be in problem eventually. Recognize those rare chances to shine, right? So this is one of the things that he tells to Arjuna. Look, here you are an amazing warrior. You're a great person, good person. Everybody loves you. And here the whole universe has brought you to this battle to take out these bad guys. It's very rare that a person gets to exercise his profession with such clear-cut goals. And, how can you give up on this at this point? And this is really does not look well on you as a person, right? So he really drives that home with that message. So ultimately, your duty emerges from purity of actions and spiritualizing actions, spiritualizing results. These are the things that, even though this might have a notion of like God or religion, has nothing to do with that. It's just, how do you come to that action from a different perspective, not from desires or senses, right? So Gita is really a call to action, right? So there are two levels of action. So as we said, there are these gunas, we all tend to have this. Most of the lazy people within us, or the laziness within us, wants us to be more tamasic. And then we might worry about my own benefit, my family's benefit. That is all rajas. And this tends to want us to be in bondage with that action, because we want that result. There's a greed associated with that action. And most of us tend to be in this state here. We are very much action driven, and most of the planet, all human beings, we are working, striving, earning more money, trying to be fruitful and all of that stuff, right? Basically looking after our family, buying that new car, getting that bigger home and all of that stuff, right? So that tends to create a sort of a bondage. And the idea is that when you come to a place where there is really a true ethical dilemma, that, hey, do you want to do this or do you want to not do this? Do you want to take up the job? Do you want to move from this place to another place and all of that, right? First of all, see how it is impacting you, but then also look at how it is impacting the overall society. In our context, I guess, look at the carbon footprint that we are causing when you're buying that new bottle of drink or whatever, right? Just think of it. Just because you can pay for it, you can afford it, does not mean that that is the right thing. Just because you could pay that money, you are creating plastic waste. You are affecting the whole planet, right? So this is that sattvic second, sort of like upper religion, if you will. So there is a given religion, a lower religion to look after yourself. There is the upper religion. And back in the old days, or even today, if you look at the religions and their rituals and everything, they tend to be like, hey, you use God as a transactional thing. Like, hey, God, I'm giving you whatever, I don't know, $100 or something, or I'm doing something good for your church so that I get a place in heaven, right? So that has been in the past the truth, or at least people lived like that. And people live like that today too, right? And it is very transactional lifestyle. As long as you are stuck in this gunas, even though you come to this selfless action, you're still driven from the benefit that you get, the heavenly life that is promised, or the kudos that you get from the society, that, oh my God, you're such an amazing community activist and all of that stuff, right? So you kind of get a rush out of it, and you tend to be virtuous based on that. And that is good for the society, but you're still sort of stuck in these gunas and prakriti. You're not going to that next level. And religion tends to do that. Why does religion tend to do this? Is because most of us want to have this world run, and our greed can help new inventions and all of that good stuff, right? So there's good stuff and bad stuff and all of that. Religion wants to sort of give you some ethical footing, if you will, when you are running after the greed. So you are saying, hey, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be like, if I'm a religious person, I would be afraid to do something bad because there's a sin attached to it or whatever. So that is what religion could be good for. There's an author by the name Seligman. Some of you might have heard. He has a formula for happiness, right? He says happiness is pleasure, the something that gives you pleasure. Then there is a higher level of happiness, when you have engagements, right, with involving other people. And then there needs to be a little more meaning that you get out of it. So you can't just be like, pleasure can be just like, I'm eating ice cream. And yes, I got some rush out of it, but you can't just be doing that only thing. You could be engaged with other people, as in this Asian philosophy class where we are engaged with each other. We are looking at something more than just ice cream. And meaning is when, you are fighting some political cause or something, that also gives you a lot of happiness when you are helping other people. So that is one of the formulas that he provides. And the equivalent thing from our Indian books would be kama, which is a desire-driven pleasure. Artha is, you work and earn money, and you're, part of a team and whatnot. And then dharma is really, you're thinking out of the box. These two levels of dharma. One is towards the self, and one is towards the society. And then there is a second level, the ultimate peace, moksha, which is really what Krishna is driving towards. He says, yes, you want to get away from tamas, you want to get away from rajas, you want to come to sattva, but ultimately, those are just the ladders. You don't want to stay stuck in any of these ladders. That's not going to be good for you. You will want to realize your own swarupa. That is the consciousness, and come to a state where you feel oneness with everything. And that is a different kind of a feeling where you are truly liberated. Has nothing to do with the liberal policies or freedom. This is your natural freedom, so this is that moksha. This is the ultimate nirvana state, if you will. Here you're not swept away by any kind of dualities, by win-loss or pleasure pain or any of that stuff. This really sort of is the foundation of the nonviolence principle that Gandhi wants to drive. So obviously he was successful to some extent. Nonviolence, anytime we feel that this is going to give me pleasure or this is going to be giving me a pain, and we try to run away from it, it's a subtle kind of a violence. If you think about it, you are neglecting something and you're trying to go towards something, and that there is a subtle form of violence, right? But the real ultimate form of nonviolence that you could achieve is when you realize the oneness with everything on the planet. Rise above all these gunas. Don't get pulled into any of this stuff. And that only comes from this knowledge, right? So that is the state of Jivan Mukta. So what is the spiritualizing actions, right? Action for welfare of others. And so these actions are really, when you're doing it, you're thinking about the community, not just like what good it is going to do for me. And also, let's say you do get good results, then it is good, right? I mean, it's everything, life is good. Thank you, great, I got it, be grateful. But this kind of attitude can also help you deal with like bad results. When something bad happens, when you have acted, you have done your best, right? But the whole karmic cycle and all of that stuff sort of helps you to kind of reflect on that bad result as if there was some past good karma that you did now that, or some bad karma that you did in the past, and now that has been taken care of. You got your punishment. So you got that bad result, and good, great, be grateful again that the bad karma is going to be wiped out. But the most key thing from this is, how can I be careful for the next time I take this action, right? Learn from everything to sort of make your best move. So the most important message from Gita on the verse 47 there, he talks about, we have no right to the results. When you're doing something, don't go in with a mindset of entitlement, right? Because even if you have done something and you think you deserve all this stuff, it is sort of unfair, because not one person can do everything. Even if you have planted a simple plant and you want to take the credit of the plant growing up, there is the contribution of sun, there's a contribution of the soil. So be a little humble. So you don't want to say like, hey, I deserve the gold medal because my plant is growing, right? It's not just your actions that have brought that about. So there is this cycle of doership that we talked about earlier. Or I sort of mentioned, but here I'm going to talk about it more. Desire to enjoy and focus on pleasant results. So whenever we have this, lots of desire to enjoy and pleasant things, I want more of that, that sort of brings about like this I-ness, doership. I want to do this. I am doing this. So why am I not getting happiness out of this, right? So I want to claim the results. even though that might not be really the honest thing to do, that the more desires you have, the more doership you have. So as I said earlier, one of the things that we want to gravitate towards is like, how can I take away the notion of doership completely from my action? I do it, that's it, done, thank you, bye-bye, right? And you might get an accolade, or people might complain, no worries, right? You just move on. Reducing desires reduce the doership. Unfulfilled desire leads to unhappiness. Desires lead to more desires, and now we are enslaved. This is that attachment. And Gandhi's, one of his bottom line things was a detached way of approaching an action, right? That's where it is coming from. Master the senses. Now, master the senses can be seen as like, oh, I'm going to just cover my eyes with a blindfold. No, you still have the inner instincts that might be driving. Master the senses could be, okay, I'm not going to eat food, right? Because that is just, I like this ice cream, I'm just going to keep away from ice cream. But then when you're keeping away from ice cream, you're still thinking about it. And that inner stuff is really taking you away from your inner peace, your inner self, that is supposed to be the place where you have to be. But you're still staying in the sense pleasure, even though you have curbed those senses, right? This is the renouncement, right? So you can stay in this world, enjoy the world, but there is a certain way to enjoy the world with the notion of renouncing the world. So so in conclusion, right, if I was to summarize chapter 1 and 2, and I'm taking this conclusion from, I think this comes from Arvind Ghosh's book, is it sets up the problem and solution really well. But as yet, all this is slightly obscure because there are certain very high philosophies that have been thrown around. Doctrine of desireless action, of detached equanimity towards win-loss or pleasure-pain, of the rejection of outward renunciation. There's no need for you to kind of renounce your clothes that you wear, your house, your family, your wives or husbands. You want to be in this world while you're renouncing everything. And then there is this notion of devotion to divine self, me. So at one point, Krishna says, attribute your action to me. This me does not, you can take it as Krishna, like that is the devotion, right, towards Krishna. You can think of Krishna as the God, and you say, I'm doing this for the Lord because Lord is acting through me. You can do that, or you can say, my consciousness, myself. So this action is really coming from deep within me, and I know that this is right? So this is that devotion. And there are multiple paths that we will be seeing. So throughout the second chapter, Arjuna is still bewildered, right? He doesn't quite get it, which is good for us because all those 18 chapters follow, because all of Arjuna's doubts are sort of our own doubts. And really, enlightenment is really changing the perspective, but that itself is quite hard. And then, next session, what we will do is, or what Krishna does is, he says, okay, fine, knowledge is not enough. So let's talk about this other thing, right? So karma yoga starts, which is worldly actions. How can you use your daily waking up, working, going to office? All of that can be used as a means of moksha or liberation. Now, what has happened over time is Buddhism, or even Shankaracharya's Vedanta, all of that sort of obscured by this tidal wave of world-shunning saints and devotees. You see these orange garbed, people who just chant things and, go take sannyasa, become saints and all of that, right? Sadhus or gurus and stuff like that. So that Krishna will actually say, if you want to do that, if that is really your true calling, no problem. But your true calling might be being a software engineer or whatever, right? Then stay there, help the society, and you can still renounce this inner rejection of desire and egoism, right? You can still do that, not the outer physical abandoning, right? So this is going to be the second the next part. So I can take a pause. My intention really, sorry it took this long, was to sort of read through some sections, but I think there might be some questions that maybe we can take that. Or I can go read through the sections if you. Looks like, yeah. Nobody has questions, so that is good. Okay, Fred.
I was kind of surprised in reading that. I think this is the commentary by Gandhi. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
He talks about he says the Vedas have as their domain the three gunas, eschew them. He further goes on to say that Arjuna should cease to concern himself with yoga and kshema, pronunciation's probably wrong, and live in the Atman, as if the Atman is in contradistinction to yoga. So I guess I'm not clear about the relationship of yoga to Atman and why you would cease to concern yourself with yoga. I would expect what's going on here is that when he says to eschew the Vedas, he's talking about sort of just a ritualistic.
Ritualistic. Yeah, Veda is about ritualistic.
Of the Vedas, and maybe that relates to his discussion of yoga as well.
Well, I mean, so yoga in depending on so which chapter you're reading there. So initially Krishna presents knowledge yoga, right? Sankhya yoga. And that might be very hard for somebody to kind of to bring in their day-to-day practice. And what that yoga says is always go rest in yourself, self meaning the consciousness. And there are ways to go there, or you can say, that's it, I can go there, right? But that is impossible for all of us because we live in a world where we have to act. So then follows this other yoga, which is the karma yoga. So how we can use that yoga to then go towards ourself. And that is probably what the confusion is coming from. And Veda is, you're right, Veda is the ritualistic thing. And this is the mixture of those gunas. And you're trying to come to sattva and with the idea that you're going to go to heaven. But in Indian mythologies, heaven is kind of a short-lived, you enjoy it for a little bit, and then you have to come back to the world of suffering. And that notion of you coming back to the world needs to be stopped, right? So that is the moksha. And that is where when you are starting to associate yourself with the self, you can see other people also as part of that self, right? So, and then you have this oneness with everything on the planet. And then your action at that point will be a pure action. It is not going to be coming from a place of greed or fear. Yeah. Next.
The yoga as unity is kind of diverse in a way. There are actually several kinds of yoga. It's interesting.
Yeah. So yoga has two meanings. One is unity, and the other is the inner calmness, the meditation power. Mm-hmm. So unity, anytime, like let's say you're taking a sweet, and the sweet is good out in our hand, but it is even better when it touches our tongue, right? So now there is that unity. So that bliss that you get, the joy that you get from unity, that is the yoga. And then there is a long process. The ultimate yoga, ultimate unity is the unity to ourself. That is where we will get that final bliss. All this ice cream eating and sweet and all of that will have a very short-lived yoga or the joy that you get out of it, right? But that ultimate yoga that you're trying to achieve is going to come only through meditation, and all of those are instruments to realize that final state. So yeah.
Okay, good. Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. Jason?
Yeah, thank you, Sashi. I think the presentation is wonderful. And that's why people have no question. But I find out one thing very, very interesting. Okay, because you talk about Prakriti, and which it means you flow inside and the sea outside, and which equivalent to English word nature, right? We can mean human nature and nature, but the interesting is in Chinese philosophy, the two words are totally unrelated. Human nature and the nature outside is totally unrelated. So I think English is screwed up, but look like the Chinese has been. So I think the nature, what's the meaning of human nature and what the meaning of nature is probably very different in Asia. I mean, Eastern Asia and Indian and European. So
possibly that take of the nature. This is just my observation that I see when we say, hey, this is not in my nature to do this, or hey, in the nature, I see this amazing tree. Right. So, and then we say Prakriti, and I'm like, oh my God, this Prakriti also starts from our thoughts and everything out there, everything that we can see. So the idea is that anytime you can measure or see or observe, that is Prakriti. Atom, electron, proton, neutron, quarks, whatever, the smallest thing that, the science is going to observe is all part of Prakriti. We will never get to consciousness by itself. Okay. So looks like there's nobody else that has questions. I was thinking we have 15 minutes. I wanted to sort of go through some of these things here. So there is this dejection that has happened, and Krishna says, whence has come to thee this dejection, the stain and darkness of the soul in the hour of difficulty and peril? This is not the way cherished by the Aryan man. This mood came not from heaven, nor can it lead to heaven, and on earth it is the forfeiting of glory. We talked about this. So Arjuna asked, hey, should I strike Bhishma or Drona? And, really, they are my God, they are my grandpa and stuff, right? So he says, I take refuge as a disciple with you, Krishna, enlighten me, and they are actually friends with each other, right? So to this day, they have been good friends. There is an interesting story, which maybe you might like. By the way, are you guys still there? Yeah. So there's an interesting story. One second. I was not sharing my screen, my bad. Or I'm sharing something. Okay, this is the one that I want to share. Okay. So there is an interesting story about what happens as Arjuna and Duryodhana, these are the two fighting parties, the heroes on both the side, right? They now have to go get help from different kingdoms. One of the kingdoms is Krishna's kingdom. And they go to Krishna saying, hey, look, they both actually surprisingly reach to Krishna's kingdom at the same time. And maybe Duryodhana is a little bit ahead. So he finds a chair, and Krishna is sleeping, so his brother Balrama says, oh, Krishna is in that room, and you guys know where he is, just go in there. And Duryodhana goes in first, and he gets the chair that is near the head of Krishna. So let's say I'm sleeping like this, and if somebody's sitting on this side, if I open my eyes, it would be hard for me to see this person, right? So next comes Arjuna, and he looks at Duryodhana and he goes, oh my God, right? So there's going to be a little bit of a conflict here. But then he goes and sits to the next empty space, which is near his feet, near Krishna's feet. Now Krishna wakes up and he looks at Arjuna and he says, hi, Arjuna, like, how can I help you? What's happening? And Duryodhana suddenly says, hey, look, I'm here too. And he's like, oh, okay, great. Both of you are here. What's happening? Duryodhana says, hey, look, we need help. Because we are going to go in a war and you have like a million soldiers or whatever, we need all of them. Duryodhana says that, and Arjuna says, yeah, I need the same, right? I have come for the same thing. So what Krishna does is he says, look, you both have come here, you both want to fight with each other, and you want these soldiers. Here's the thing. So you can choose between two things because you're two of you. One is my whole army or myself. So pick between Krishna or Krishna's army. That is what he puts in front of them. And he says, the first choice I'm going to give is to Arjuna because I saw Arjuna for the first time. As I opened my eyes, and Duryodhana, you were sitting in the back, so I did not see you. I'm sorry. I'm going to let Arjuna pick. And Duryodhana is suddenly like, oh my God, like I really want this army to fight on my side. And now here my chance goes at winning, right? As he is internally really desiring to want that army. And what happens? Arjuna says, hey, Krishna, if that is the choice that you have put in front of me between yourself and your whole army, I pick you. I want you on my side. I don't want your army. And Duryodhana is elated. He gets the whole army, and Arjuna gets the Krishna to be his charioteer, who is not going to pick up the arm throughout this battle. But he's an amazing charioteer, as we can see. He goes through this whole cycle. So that's an interesting side note, sort of. So he says, thou grievest for those that should not be grieved for, yet speakest words of wisdom, right? So he has come up with the whole wisdom. So Krishna says, well, there is true wisdom. And I can tell you, if you really want to talk about wisdom, let's talk about wisdom. The enlightened man does not mourn either for the living or for the dead. Everybody is going to die. Our bodies are changing, things are changing. All these people are going to die, right? That is the wisdom that you want to remember. It is not true that at any time I was not, nor thou, nor these kings of men, nor is it true that any of us shall ever cease to be hereafter. So he goes through this whole thing about don't worry about killing them. The material touches, O son of Kunti. Kunti is the mother of Arjuna. Giving cold and heat, pleasure and pain, things transient which come and go, these learn to endure, right? When pleasure comes, it is easy to endure that, but don't feel too elated in the pleasure. When pain comes, endure that. So this is in chapter 2. I'm reading 14th verse there, right? The man whom these do not trouble, pleasure or pain, these come and go. The man whom these do not trouble, nor pain, O lion-hearted among men, right? He calls Arjuna lion-hearted, which he is. The firm and wise, who is equal in pleasure and suffering, makes himself apt for immortality. So yeah, Jason, go ahead.
No, you continue. I just have different questions. So
yeah, go ahead. Ask the question.
Yeah, the question is different. I think that you talk about Ilan Vatar from Henry Person. Yeah, you associate this one with Prussia. Okay.
Yes.
I kind of think about in different opinion. I think when Henry Person talk about Ilan Vatar, I think he's talking about Brahman. All right.
Oh, yeah. So Brahman and Purusha, these are if you look at the slide, let me bring that up here. They are the same thing, okay? They're literally the same thing. And I'll explain that. It's this one. Let's share this one.
So one is a small I, one is a big I. That's what we are talking about.
No. The small I is something different. So let's look at that. That's a good question. Okay. So if you look at this, right? So everything at the beginning, if there's no such thing as beginning. This has always been there. Consciousness, Brahman, always there. There is some turbulence that happens, and what comes out of it is Purusha, or our bodies, right? Our conscious bodies. We are made of two elements. One is Purusha. Purusha really is this infinite consciousness within us. Yet we have forgotten about that. And remember, we talked about this in the Drigdrisha Viveka, where our mind our ego starts thinking, hey, look, I am the one who can observe this, and look, I can do this, and I am doing this, and I am doing that, right? So he forgets that the energy or the thing that makes the mind work, or the eye work, or our senses work, is the consciousness, or the Ilan Vital. And that is given to us because of this element of Purusha that is part of our constitution, you know. So we have this force, a life force, that makes our hands alive, our eyes alive, our ears alive, but our ego comes in the middle and says, no. I am it. I am the guy. You are somebody else, and you are causing pain to me, right? So that is the way to look at this. And this Purusha is Brahman, same thing. It's just one of those things that we have forgotten. We think I is the subject, this mind is the subject, this ego is the subject, except it is not. It is actually the object, and the subject is the Brahman, or the Atman, or the Purusha, same thing. And that is the life force that is common in all of us. That is what that is because it is there in every bubble here. Everybody has this Purusha, but everybody is acting via this Maya, this Prakriti, which is the problem, right? That Hinduism is trying to bring about. Does that kind of help you, Jason?
Oh yeah. Thank you. One more question. Okay. When I know in India had the non-dualism and the dualism. When we talk, I think this guy, what's his name? Aurobindo. Okay.
Aurobindo Ghosh. Yeah.
Aurobindo Ghosh is talking about the dualism. So when we talk about dualism, are we talking about the Purusha and the Prakriti as a dualism?
No. Dualism comes from our ignorance about Purusha. We don't know about Purusha. We think that we are the mind and the body and the world, and all of this stuff that we can actually see, and we tend to like and dislike. We love something, we hate something. Those are the dualities that control our actions. So our actions are driven by dualities in life. And what happens when we realize our Purusha is that we can see the Purusha in the other person as well. And so we kind of feel oneness with the whole planet. And our actions are now non-dual. They are not driven by the dualities which are going to give me pleasure, pain, that kind of stuff.
I'm sorry. Okay. So when let's say in the European philosophy, when we talk about dualism, typically we talk about Descartes, right? So that's the mind body. That's the two things. That's why I call dualism. And in Indian, the dualism is what and what?
Dualism is used in multiple ways. Dualism is me and the other. There is that one thing. The other can be the God. You know, there are lots of religions where they say God is out there, so I need to pray to God, right?
Oh, okay.
That is one way of looking at dualism. Dualism is also used in dualities of life. And, you know, there are always pleasure, pain, and all of that, you know, like good, bad, heaven, hell, you know, all of that stuff, right? So those are also dualities, and dualism comes from that. Like, you know, I want that and I don't want that. I want to go to heaven. I don't want to go to hell. So I like this. I don't like that. So all of that is also dualities. But then when you talk about dualistic religions are talking about God out there in the heaven. Heaven is the skies. But when you look at non-dualism, we say God is in here, you know, in all of us. That is one. That is the non-dualism.
So what kind of message in this text going to teach? It's going to teach dualism or?
No. So what happens here is this is a very interesting text where it takes dualistic God out there, you know, so many times we need this notion of, okay. So the very first knowledge that we went through, the second chapter, right? All of that is like, once you realize yourself, everything is non-dualism and you're done, right? That is it. So that is one approach that Krishna has already talked about. That is the Advaita Vedanta. That is non-dualism in chapter 2. That is the knowledge. Ultimately, that is the goal, right? So ultimately, you know, if you look at this, right, I'm the doer. I am the Purusha, not the Prakriti. This is the non-dualistic. When you come and relate with Purusha and not get distracted by Maya, when you connect with Purusha, which means you're connected to Brahman, everything is one. And now it is a non-dual way of looking at it. Krishna already covers that in chapter 2, right? Now, what happens there is, it is very hard. It is great to read about it. It feels nice, but we are always not driven like that. We are still focused on our family. We love our children. We cannot love equally our neighbor's children, or we cannot see without bias. We have actions that we have to play. So then comes Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is about how can I use actions that I do to purify and come to this realization of Purusha. So that is the Karma Yoga, looking at the actions. But as you're doing action, what happens is you start thinking, wait, you know, I cannot, like, when I do this action, in the middle of it, I'm still thinking about the goal. And I'm still thinking about the money that I'm going to make from this. And all of that, that is driving my action. I know that. So I'm losing my concentration. I'm losing my stuff. So this is where the notion of this God comes about, right? Krishna is going to talk about that. He's going to say that think of me or any deity, any God, use that as an instrument. Because when you take a piece of rock or something and you say like, that is the God, what you have done is you have controlled your ego and you're saying this little piece of rock is way bigger than me. You know, this cross in Christian philosophy, it is way bigger than me. I'm a small thing. So all my actions is for Jesus' cause. All my actions are for Krishna's cause, right? So now there is this dualistic religion, right? So what Krishna is going to say is use the dualistic religion to eventually realize that, hey, this God that you have made out here is yourself. So it's that ladder, right? So, and then that devotion also needs concentration, right? So that concentration is going to come from one other path that, you know, we tend to use quite a lot, you know, but we have forgotten why that is there. Just like we have forgotten why God was created. God was created for us to realize our non-dualistic nature. But we forgot that and we always keep God out there, right? That's what all the religions do. There is yoga. Yoga is used for health benefits and all of that. That's not the point of yoga. Point of yoga is when you sit quietly and control your breathing, the exercises, you're supposed to realize oneness with the whole planet. That is never talked about in these yoga classes, right? So that is the other sort of like concentration, that is the dhyana yoga. So there is the karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, bhakti yoga. Bhakti yoga is the dualistic religion part. So he is going to bring all of that together, which is why this is an amazing little thing where it is looking at your state and he's going to give you guidance at your state, right? Wherever you are in your life. You could be religious, you could be non-religious. So, oh, somebody raised a hand. Mahatma, you want to talk?
Yes, my name is actually Nalini. Last name is Mahatma.
Hi, Nalini.
Hi. I just have, you were reading those shlokas and verses. The 11th verse says, "The blessed Lord said, thou grievest for those that should not be grieved for, yet speakest words of wisdom. The enlightened man does not mourn either for the living or for the dead." And then he, Lord Krishna goes on further. Now, later on in Gita, when Arjun's son, Abhimanyu, breaks that circle, and then he is unfortunately killed, Arjun finds out about what when he finds out that his son has been killed, I believe, if I remember correctly, that Lord Krishna gets there as soon as possible. And Arjun is lamenting and he breaks down. At that time, he says something to the effect that I should not be mourning. And Lord Krishna says, no, it's okay. This is the time to mourn. You can mourn. This is not what I have taught you. But at the same time, you need to remember your duty. And after breaking down, crying, he then gets up and then he goes back to the war.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I thought that was so beautiful.
Yes.
That even though we are being told, just like you don't leave the house, you don't, take off the clothes that you're wearing, you can do all that, but at the same time, go for the higher or try to achieve the higher.
Yeah, no, that's the whole epic. There is so many such short stories everywhere that are so powerful. Duryodhana at one point tells to Krishna, look, I know about all of these good philosophies, dude. There's something within me that wants me to behave like the way how I behave. Okay, I don't have control over myself. So don't blame me, he says, right? He raises the hand up. Don't blame me. So this is what happens earlier before Gita. And that is indeed, if you look at Duryodhana, he sort of represents all of us, If you look at us, as we go about our ways in lives, we many times as an afterthought, we know what was the right thing to do, but at that moment, we cannot do that. It's as if somebody within us drives us to do that evil. But at that time, we know that evil is not evil. I'm doing the right thing.
Yes.
If I'm yelling at my son, I'm doing the right thing at that point. That's how I feel. I'm very much guilty of that. And I really want to thank Jason for really, helping me participate in this stuff. And it really, really grounds me a lot. Thank you, Jason. I really appreciate this. Yeah.
And thank you. The slides were beautiful, especially with all your graphs. So thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Anybody else? I think with this context, I will, what we will do, Jason, is there is a link that I'm going to send out to you. As long as you can view the graphs, the slides, everybody else can view those slides. So you can send it out rather than keeping it as a PDF, because I'll be adding chapter 3s and chapter 4s and all of that as I go through to that same link. Okay.
Oh, you mean for your presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so it become a live. Right?
Live document. So
okay, so how about like let me post on the always post on your meetup. So
Sure.
every time people can read it, and you just notion when this section we are which page we are going to start, right?
Yeah.
So for the person who missed the previous section, he still or she still have the chance to review the previous section. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So
that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, the next thing we will be talking about, like I said, is so what you will see when you click on the link is going to be something like this, right? So this would be the view. Oh, sorry, you guys can't see the screen, right?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Okay. So we will be talking about action yoga, like all of our actions in this world. What does Krishna tell us? How do we approach that?
So are we going to continue on section 2, chapter 2, or we're going to...
No. Chapter 2 is done. Chapter 2, at this point, I was hoping to hit the summary in 1 hour, but unfortunately it became 1.5 hours. So sorry about that. But I would like to do as much reading as possible rather than preaching. I would rather be doing reading and let Krishna tell us, because that would be way more powerful, I think.
Sashi, let me give a suggestion. Probably you want to break down in a few sections, so we can have a discussion in between.
Sure.
So, because I also learn from the experience, because we become more and more professional. So yeah. Sometimes I think that your presentation is pretty good, everyone. So there's a lot I have to absorb. So if you can break down in like 2 or 3 sections, we can have the 5 minutes discussion. I think it will be better.
Yeah, in fact, now what you guys can do is you can actually go to this and just read chapter 2. Chapter 1 is a lot of it is just context and characters and all that. You're welcome to read that. But the most interesting one would be Gandhi's first couple chapters. Is really amazing how he comes about, like he'll give you some historical context and all of that stuff. But really, I mean, if you just want to go to the knowledge itself, just the chapter 2 with all the stuff that we talked about, I think that would be good. And then we will cover chapter 3 next time. Yeah.
So, Jason, could I ask quickly, will the slides be in the meetup, the slides, or just the presentation here?
Yeah,
both.
Both. I already sent the link. Okay.
Oh
in
my
the
gosh.
Chat. Okay.
Oh,
you can.
Thank you.
And on every meetup page, and I have, if you go to the bottom, I have the link for all the video and PowerPoint, if the presenter willing to share. Okay, but most of them will. Okay, so it not only this year, also include everything in 2022, 2021. So whatever possible, I put it there. It's for you to review. Yeah.
By the way, Jason, did you stop the recording?
Yeah, I'm going to stop.
It'll be
Okay.
you can edit that, right? You can reduce the last